I love coffee. I think a lot of people love coffee. And I think this might be less common, but I love making coffee. It is one of my smaller side hobbies. I enjoy learning new methods of making coffee and the experience of the coffee making process about as much as I enjoy actually drinking a cup of coffee. Now, don't get me wrong, I do love a good tasting cup of coffee, but I wouldn't say that I'm super picky about it either. I mean, I've drank my fair share of college cafeteria coffee and hotel coffee, and so on a day when I just want a quick and easy cup of coffee, I will throw some pre-flavored, pre-ground coffee into my probably $30 Farberware drip brew machine over here that my parents bought me for college probably a decade ago, which really makes me feel old to think about. But most days, I am all about that coffee making experience, trying out different brewing methods. So currently, I have a French press, which you are probably familiar with. I also have a Turkish coffee pot. I think this is called a chezva, but I might be pronouncing that wrong because I do not speak any Turkish. And I also know that this is not a very traditional one. Typically, they are made of copper and can be very decorative, but this is just a cheap one that I got when I wasn't sure if I would like it or not, and I haven't bought a fancy one because this one does work fine. And then I have a maca pot, which is a good way to make coffee that is pretty near espresso strength and passes for espresso all right in something like a latte. However, a maca pot doesn't technically make espresso. Now, in its original form, espresso was simply a way to make coffee similar to what comes from this maca pot, but faster, hence the name. And it's made faster by applying pressure to force the water through the grounds. But then in the mid 1900s, modern espresso begins where they add even more pressure and discover that it forces out more of the carbon dioxide from the grounds into the coffee, giving it a foamy, creamy texture called crema. That's like the super abridged version of that. Um, Anyhow, in order to make proper espresso now, you need to be brewing with enough pressure to produce crema. So if you use a maca pot, it's not just slower, but the texture of the coffee is also different. Similarly, most inexpensive espresso machines will use some pressure that gets you that maca pot type of strong coffee more quickly, but not enough pressure to actually produce crema. To get that really nice cafe quality espresso, you typically need to buy a machine that will cost you upwards of $500, which is a lot and probably just not worth it for most people. So that is where these espresso makers from Flair come in, which strip out a lot of the espresso machine to give you just the basics in a manual machine capable of making proper and customizable espresso. And what I have here today is I've bought the Flair Classic with the pressure gauge kit, which they retail for about $230, but I got on sale for more like $180, which is still pretty expensive, but my expectation is that this will pretty much last forever. You can also get the Flair Neo Flex for just $100, but it is made of plastic instead of aluminum, and so I was just concerned that it might not hold up as long or have that premium feel that I wanted. So let's now unbox this and see how it works. Just kidding, it's not actually in there, it's on the table. I've been using it for like a month now. I know it's a little bit ironic to be drinking tea while I open up an espresso machine, but you are allowed to enjoy both drinks. I give you permission to like tea and coffee. All right. thought I would just open this up live with you here, and we will just see how it looks. I have not opened the package beyond cracking the lid, so I don't know yet really exactly what it's going to look like. When you do open it up, though, inside of this cardboard box, it's in this lovely travel case. And there is a zip tie holding the zipper shut. Not sure that is completely necessary. Alright, so if we open up this travel case, I don't really see me traveling with this a lot. I will say, that's, I think, a bit too much of a faff for coffee when I'm traveling somewhere. Probably, just grab the hotel lobby coffee. It doesn't taste good, but it's much more convenient. All right, so to open it up here, we do have a little bit of extra foam tossed in for shipping, which when it's in a travel case feels like that's excessive. But this is the base. We've got the plastic drip tray. Here's our lever arm. Sticks in there. Here we have a screw that you can put in to lock this post in place. This is the tamper, which is bubble wrap. I upgraded to the pressure gauge kit for the classic version of this, which comes with this tamper and the pressure gauge. Both of those were things that I wanted. Pressure gauge to be able to see how much force I'm applying a little bit more clearly, especially because I don't really know what I'm doing. And then just a little bit nicer tamper. I think this guy here is kind of a multi-tool sort of thing for this. I guess you can use as a dosing cup. Not sure exactly how. You can use it as a tamper, and you use it for pushing the piston back out. But this is just a little bit nicer, adds a little something to the experience. This is all pre-assembled here. You got your coffee basket and your little shower head and your piston that you use to actually apply that pressure. Little funnel for filling our basket with. All right, very nice. Everything looks pretty nice in this package. Everything looks pretty high quality. That was why I went for the classic version over like the Neo Flex, because it's made with a lot of plastic, and this is mostly metal, so I feel like this is probably just built to last. But anyway, in a bit here, I will actually grind some coffee and give this a little testing out. My cat is having a grand old time down here. She's been chasing this ball all around. And it's under the couch again. She always hits it under there, and then I have to dig them out. There's like 4 of them, and they're always all under the couch. Alright, moving on. So there are a lot of different Flair machines, and like I said, I got the Classic with the pressure gauge upgrade, which adds the pressure gauge and the stainless steel tamper. And that pressure gauge, in my opinion, is really important so that you have an idea of how much pressure to apply and have a consistent number to go off of for consistency across of your brews. This is almost entirely aluminum as well, so it seems like it should essentially last forever. You could do quite nicely with the cheaper Neo Flex version, but I really appreciate that higher build quality and durability. This just feels like a very well-made premium product, and I know that I will enjoy that every time I use it. Now, on their website, Flair really seemed to be pushing beginners, as I am, towards the Neo Flex, which comes with a pressurized portafilter that is more forgiving if you have the wrong grind size, a cheap grinder, or are using pre-ground coffee, which you really should not do unless it's a flavored coffee, because it tastes much better when it is freshly ground. Now, there is a trade-off to that pressurized filter, that you can't necessarily control your variables as much to dial in that perfect shot. But like, that's kind of the point of it, is to remove those variables for simplicity. Now, a regular portafilter is included with the NeoFlex to move up to, as well as you could buy a pressurized one separately for the Classic, but I personally didn't do that. So my concern was that it was going to be completely impossible for me to make espresso with this, because the website kind of felt like they were trying to scare you off, but it's really not that bad. You do need a halfway decent grinder, and it does probably have to be a burr grinder, but still, whatever this hand grinder that I got from Amazon years ago is, it works perfectly fine. As you can see, it's really not that hard to use and only takes me maybe 10 minutes from start to finish. So is this beginner friendly? I would say relatively, if you are sort of a person who likes to make coffee by hand, which I am. The bad reviews for this were mostly people saying it was too much work, and yeah, there are a lot of steps you need to take to make your coffee this way. There's a lot of little parts to fiddle with, but that's exactly why I personally like it. If you want something that does it all for you, then this just isn't for you. But I am here for all those little fiddly bits because I want to enjoy slowing down and being in the moment through that whole process. Really, brewing is my coffee break. It's a very mindful experience, and then I'll drink it while I get back to work. You can also do more advanced things with this machine. So you can, of course, adjust the dosage and the grind size. You can adjust the water temperature that you're putting in, and you can adjust the pressure profile, which is how much pressure you're applying throughout the shot. For me, and I know this might be a bit more controversial, but I like a bitter cup of coffee and really don't like much of any acidity in it. So I've actually found that I like a very low pressure to start off and then ramping that up towards the end, which is a bit backwards from what most people do. With most electric machines, though, it's just not going to be possible to adjust the pressure that way. It's going to instead automatically use one pressure all the way through. And that pressure profile really makes a big difference in the way that your coffee will taste. But yeah, while it took a couple of weeks to really get good at it, I was getting espresso with some crema on day one and really only had a couple of failed attempts that I did throw out. Now, I am the sort of person who will fully dive into something and get all the different tools for it right away. And so I've gotten some other little things that probably aren't strictly necessary. The minimum that you need is a kettle of some kind and a grinder that can make espresso-sized grounds, which I already had. And really any kettle would do, but I already had this gooseneck one, which you can set the water temperature on to any degree that you want, and it will keep the water warm, which is really nice for experimenting with different temperatures and starting the water and then keeping it warm while you are setting everything up. But then some other stuff that I have gotten are a scale that can measure in tenths of grams to get precise amounts of coffee. I got also a little bit nicer dosing cup than the one that it comes with. The included one is this plastic one that you can also use as a tamper, and then if you turn it over, it's the tool for pressing this piston back out when you are done. Whereas this ceramic dedicated one spreads the beans out a little bit more so that you can mist them with the included mister that it came with. Misting, I learned, reduces static while you are grinding, so it grinds the coffee a little bit more easily and keeps it from clumping up. And because I'm here for the experience, it's just really fun to do. Next, I also got a WDT tool, which is a special tool for stirring the grounds to even them out and get rid of any air pockets. I found that actually to be super helpful, but before I got the special tool, I was using a toothpick, and that worked okay too. It just didn't feel nearly as fancy, and these are actually pretty cheap. And then probably the least necessary thing is that I got a shot mirror so that you can watch the espresso coming out. That serves no actual purpose whatsoever, but I'm like a child and I want to watch it coming out. So to give an overall review on this, I would rate it a 9 out of 10, I guess. The one downside for me is that it does only make a single shot. So if you want 2 shots or you're making drinks for your friends, you have to take it apart and prep everything again. Now you can get a second portafilter or an entire second piston, but of course that costs extra. So say you're a couple and you want to make coffee together, you would want to get a second one. That doesn't really specifically apply to me and my girlfriend though, because she doesn't like coffee, so most of the time that's not an issue. The second downside is just for people who want a very simple cup of espresso. This really is not going to be the machine for you. I guess that's an upside for me because I think it's fun, but if you want the machine to do all the work for you, there are better, although more expensive options out there. I saw a Ninja machine, for example, that will actually do a calculation and dial in the grind size and everything for you, which is super cool. The upsides, though, I really enjoy the experience of making coffee with this, and I've made some excellent cappuccinos and stuff with it. Oh, which you would need a milk frother for that too, but I already have 2 of those for some reason. Like I said, making coffee is a really mindful activity for me. I like to be very in touch with that process, and so this is perfect. It's a great value compared to a full electric machine, which are really out of the range of what I would want to spend for making espresso. Honestly, this still felt pretty expensive, but I feel pretty confident that it's going to last a long time, and at $180 on sale, it was a much more reasonable splurge than $500. Also, I didn't mention it because it's not something that I see myself doing, but this is relatively portable. It packs into this case nicely, and you could take it with you anywhere as long as you have a way to boil water. So yeah, I like it. It's been super fun to use, and I've been enjoying an afternoon espresso to give me some energy for the day, especially when some of the time lately it's been super hot outside, and so I've not been drinking as many teas or whatever throughout the day. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was really fun for me to share some of my life with you. So like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.